At 74 years old, jazz bassist Alex Layne is a true living legend in jazz, working hard to make his return to the New York scene. In his youth, at age 20, he landed a job working in the house band at Count Basie's Jazz Club in Harlem, where he played with some of the who's who in jazz, including Coleman Hawkins, Max Roach, and Freddie Hubbard, just to name a few. Alex has been off the New York scene in recent years, and he's now making a return. He took many years where he was studying in school, playing musicals in Europe, and living in Long Island. Alex also spent time raising his children and navigating life. Now he has the time, and it's almost like he's a youngster again. He's able to play on the scene, go to jam sessions, and lead his own band.
My career has gone through changes every 10 years. From 1959 to 1969, I worked with a number of prominent singers. Carmen McRae, Billy Eckstine, Miriam Makeba, Johnny Hartman, Terry Thornton, and a number of other notable singers whose names I can't recall offhand. Then for the next 10 years, I returned to school. So I was in school primarily from at least 1970, 71 until 1979. And I just did small jobs on the side. I was going to school full time.
I met Alex Layne back in the 60s. Quite a long time ago. Kind of giving away our age too, but that's all right. But over the years, he's developed into excellent musician, well-studied musician over the years. And we would hit on and off. We would run into each other on gigs or whatever. It was a now and then thing. But I've known him quite a long time, and he's always been an upstanding person. You know, no nonsense, and handles his business very well. You know.
And in 1979, I began to do Broadway shows in Europe. I went over with a show called No Maps on My Taps, which was a show about the history of black tap dancing, and included some of the great tap dancers that were still alive, Chuck Green primarily, Buster Brown, Sandman Sims. Then I went back again with Bubbling Brown Sugar. Did over a year there with Bubbling Brown Sugar. Came home, went back again with Ain't Misbehaving, the Fats Waller Show. And then in '89, I went over again with Sophisticated Ladies. So that was a third 10-year period. Then when I returned, I moved to Long Island. And for the next 10 years, almost 10 years, I worked Sonny's Club, which was a premier club on Long Island. And I worked a lot of restaurants with some of the Long Island players. But I was completely out of touch with the New York scene. So a lot of people thought I was actually dead.
Oh, wow.
So when I came back in around 96, guys said, well, I thought you were dead. Well, in a manner of speaking, maybe I was.
Alex lives in his small apartment in the northeastern part of Harlem, not far from where he began performing and hanging out at Harlem night spots.
This has been my sanctuary for 11 years. When I'm in here, no one bothers me. I'm at peace.
Alex's mother was from South Carolina, and she was a teacher who graduated from Benedict College in the 1930s. She came to New York to take additional courses at Columbia University.
And my mother, being an educated person in those years, she desired for me to have, I guess, what would be termed a liberal arts education. So at 6 years of age, in fact, prior to the acquisition of the piano, my sister and I used to beg, we want a piano, we want a piano. So one Christmas we woke up and here was the piano. And we sat down and started banging on it. My mother said, oh no, there'll be none of that. We said, what? She said, you have to take lessons. We said, lessons, what's that?
Yeah.
So for the next 6 years, from 6 until 12, she labored through me with these piano lessons. At 12 years old, when I graduated elementary school, I asked my mother, could I quit the piano? She said, I'm so tired of fighting with you about practicing. Yes, you may quit. She realized the value of education. She was an educated person in an era when, especially black women, didn't even have an education. When I left elementary school, I went to junior high school. I was sitting in class one day and someone came by and said, who would like to take the test for music and art? And I was being a wise guy, I raised my hand, and they took my name, and lo and behold, to my surprise, I passed the test.
Wow.
I was in a class, we were the second group of blacks that had attended the High School of Music and Art, which was at that time was on 135th Street and St. Nicholas Terrace. And in my class was Bobby Capers, who went on to work with Monaco, Santa Maria, and a number of other notables. Pete LaRocca, who was probably the most well-known of all of us. Billy Gardner, who for a number of years was Arthur Prysock's accompanist. He was a trumpet player at the time we started.
Alex's father was an immigrant from the island of St. Vincent in British West Indies, who owned a prominent store in the neighborhood in which Alex lived.
My father was in my life until he was living with us until I was 13.
Until you were 13?
Yeah, but
he wasn't a very good father.
Well, he was in this sense. One day I was going to school.
Yeah.
And he said, I was about 7 years old. He said, where you going? I said, I'm going to school. He said, oh, you go to school now? I said, yes. He said, well, after school, report to the store. And I started working from that day on and have never stopped. As a teenager, when I began to see my friends fall astray of the law, become incarcerated, get killed, up into my mid-20s, I began to realize that the one thing that separated me from them, well, not the one thing, but one of the main things was the fact that they either wouldn't or couldn't work. I always would. In 1959, I was working at Orchard Beach, picking up garbage. Came home and my phone rang. And someone said, is this Alex Layne? I said, yes. He said, my name is Steve Pullum. I have the band at Count Basie's nightclub, and I need a bass player. Would you be interested? I said, of course. And so within a week, I began to work at one of the most prestigious nightclubs in Harlem, and certainly the home of the most prestigious jam session. And one of our nights was the Monday night. We played Monday night, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon.
In moving past Alex's various life incarnations, by Alex's return to New York in the mid-1990s, the music scene had slowed down and there was less work.
The scene had completely dried up. There were very few jobs, but that's when I went to work for Jazz Foundation. Yeah. And I formed my own crew. And I started doing gigs under my own name.
Now, at the age of 74, more than 50 years later, Alex is performing with a distinguished band of elders who were hired by the Jazz Foundation of America's Richard Parsons to perform at his newly renovated Mintons Jazz Club.
One of our bases. We actually have several. I happen to be the chairman of something called the Jazz Foundation of America. Yeah. And basically what Jazz Foundation does is it works with a lot of the older jazz musicians who used to have gigs here in town but can't get them anymore. We have jazz in school program where we try and find gigs. Sure. So I know most of the guys in the band through my Jazz Foundation incarnation.
Danny Mixon, the musical director for Mintons, hired pianist Ed Stout for a regular gig at Mintons, who in turn hired Alex.
Danny Mixon put the groups together. Danny Mixon's put the groups together, but he did present me with certain people I could have in the band. And Alex Layne was one of them, and I chose him, over some other folks that I didn't think was really going to be able to handle things the same, because he's been a very great musician. Also, he's given me some gigs, so we do pass stuff back and forth. But
vastly interested in acquiring more work with my own group. I have some very fine musicians working with me, and I hope that this job will put me in a position to be able to get more work on my own, as well as hold on to this job, which is one of the premier jobs in the city.